time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. What I'm going to share with you today is an option you can buy for Shackles for your first generation Toyota 4Runner. If you're familiar with the videos I've already done with my 85 4Runner, you know that I've had a problem with Death Wobble. You know, that crazy wobble that basically sends you out of control. I thought I had it figured out when I discovered that the U-bolts that attached the leaf springs to the front axle were a little bit under torqued, and that actually fixed it for a while. But now, after I went on a couple four-wheeling adventures, I noticed that the polyurethane bushings that I got from Trail Gear are already destroyed, and when I was trying to return home from my cabin up in the gold country, as soon as I aired up my tires and tried to get on the road, the Death Wobble started with a vengeance, and I had no choice but to pull over and figure out what was going on. And what I discovered is those poly bushings from Trail Gear were already wasted. So what I had to do is get a couple big wrenches on those bolts and nuts for the rear shackles on the front leaf springs, and I just had to crank them down really tight to where the bushings are just getting even more mangled. The problem with the Trail Gear shackle design is there's no natural stop to where you can crank down those bolts to where they are super tight, but they're not damaging the bushing. So when I put those Trail Gear polyurethane bushings into the Trail Gear shackles that are greasable, I could only tighten them down enough to where they were compressing the bushing, but not necessarily majorly deforming them and causing them damage. And I thought I was all good until, like I said, I did a couple of four-wheeling adventures, nothing too crazy, and the bushings are already shot. So what I'm going to share with you today is an option that comes from Davez Off Road. They call them the no wobble shackles. Here's what they look like right here. They come bare metal. I actually just shot them with some black spray paint to protect them from rust. And the main benefit of these is they have a sleeve in the middle here. So when you tighten the bolts and capture the bushings, this metal sleeve is going to stop you from destroying the bushing. So what I'm hoping for with these shackles is I'm going to discover that the bushings are going to last for a really long time, and I'm going to get rid of my Death Wobble problems. So I will be reporting back over time after I use these for a while on some four-wheeling trips and figure out, are these the good fix that people have reported, or maybe not so much. Instead of going with the poly bushings this time, I'm choosing to go with a rubber bushing that Davez Off Road also sells. So I'm going to give these a chance, and hopefully they're going to be more durable than the poly bushings I got from Trail Gear. Again, we will see as time goes on whether these are going to be the right choice, or maybe I should go back to poly. So now let's go out to the truck and let me show you how to install these Davez Off Road no wobble shackles. So I did the passenger side first, learned a few things that I will share on this driver side. As you can see, look at the bushing damage, and this was just after two fairly mellow four-wheel drive trips, nothing too crazy. I'm going to start off by loosening the bolt and nut for the bottom part of the shackle. On these Trail Gear shackles, the size of the nut and bolt is 27 millimeter. I'm going to hold the side with the Zerk fitting, and then I'm going to zip off the nut with my DeWalt gun with a deep 27 millimeter socket. Now, just like we showed when I installed the Trail Gear bushings in that other video we did, you're going to have to play around with the height of the differential to hit the sweet spot to where you can get the bolt out really easily. So that's what we're going to do next. This is my girlfriend, Allison. Say hi, Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Okay. So she's going to work the jack, which is underneath the axle right here. And then I'm going to tell her when we hit the sweet spot. I'm going to be pulling on this bolt, and when she gets it to the right spot and it starts to pull out really easy, then I'll tell her to stop. So go ahead and start lowering the differential. Stop right there. When you get to the sweet spot, you should be able to pull it out pretty easily. I'm just grabbing onto the head of the bolt with a channel locks, and look at that, it comes out nice and easy. You shouldn't have to fight it if you get the differential at the right height. Now that I've got the bolt out, what I'm gonna have my little helper do is lower the differential a little more to where the spring will go down below the shackle, and then I could easily remove the bushings. Go ahead. Keep going, right there, good. I'm gonna get the old bushings out just with a little pry bar. If you have a little bit of a flange left, that will be ideal, because then you could get underneath the lip and pry outward and try to get it out. So it's sort of coming out. There we go. And then once you get one out, you can go in from the inside, catch the lip, and pop it out the other side. There we go. Both of them are out. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the bolt to where I can completely remove the shackle from the frame. Because I have the exhaust in the way, I can't get onto this nut with a socket, so I'm getting onto it with a big gear wrench, 27mm box end wrench, and then I'm working a ratchet on the other side with a deep 27mm socket. Okay, might have to do some persuasion to get this bolt out. I'm gonna see if I can just grab onto the head of the bolt with this channel locks and pull the bolt this way and see if I can free it of the frame. There we go, finally. So now it's all the way out. Now I gotta get the bushings out of the frame tube. I'm using the same technique of getting in between the lip of the bushing and the frame and prying out, and you'll be able to get them out. There's one, and then I'll just pry on this side too and get the other one out. So I got both bushings out. Now I'm going to insert the replacement bushings into the frame tube. These are the rubber ones I got from Davez Off Road. You don't want to lubricate the outside of the bushing. You want to lubricate the inside of the bushing really well, so you have an easy time of sliding the sleeve through the bushings. So you want to use a lot of lubricant. What I'm going to use is some Mission silicone paste. This works pretty good for bushings, rubber, and polyurethane. Just put a lot in there. Don't be shy. And I'm going to do the same with the other one. Okay, I've got both bushings in the frame tube. Now that you have the bushings inside the frame tube and they're lubricated on the inside diameter, you get one of your sleeves. It doesn't matter which one, they're both the same length. And you want to lubricate it really well, because this is going to help with the insertion of the sleeve through the bushings. Again, don't be shy with the amount you use. Go ahead and use a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to slide it through the bushing, going from the outside one towards the inside. I've got it started and it's being held in place with that outside bushing. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more on this shaft. And now with just using my hand, I'm going to try to push this sleeve through both bushings. I'm holding counter pressure on the inside bushing. I've got the sleeve most of the way in, but I'm going to finish it with a rubber mallet. And once you knock it in flush with the face of the bushing, you're done. Next, what I'm going to do is get the shackles connected to the upper bushings. So you grab both your plates and you grab one of your bolts with the washer at the head of the bolt. I'm going to set it up to where the bolt is on the outside and the nut is on the inside of the frame rail. So I'm going to go through one of them first, slide it through the sleeve. So then you slide your other plate on, and then you get a washer, and then you get your nylon lock nut on. I'm just going to get this hand tight, and then we're going to start working on getting these bushings in. Here's another set of the rubber bushings from Davez Off Road. Now, when I talked to Dave over the phone, he said the bushings for the frame tubes and the bushings for the leaf springs should be the same if I had trail gear leaf springs, and that's what I assumed I had. But here's what I found out. When I put these in, there's a gap. If you can see that gap right there, that's a pretty big gap. I had to figure out what to do about that. I had some Trail Gear polyurethane bushings at my house, and here's the comparison. If you look at the height, you can see that the Trail Gear polyurethane bushings aren't as tall. And so what I did on the passenger side and what I'm going to do on this side is I'm going to utilize the poly ones on the bottom connection here, because that's the only choice I have, unless I want to try to do a clean slice and shorten these, which I really don't want to mess with that. So same thing, you don't want to lubricate the outside of the bushing, but you want to get a lot of lubrication on the inside diameter. So again, I'm going to use the silicone paste and then do the other side. Okay, on to the next step. Here's another issue I found out doing the passenger side. These leaf springs are obviously a narrower width than the Trail Gear ones that this kit was sort of meant to work with, or maybe other brands the same type of width. So with the nylon spacers on the ends of the sleeve, you can see the problem I have right here. There's a gap. So if I can't figure out a way to make up the gap, when you tighten up the shackles, they're going to bottom out on the sleeve and there's going to be no pressure on the bushing. So what I came up with is putting a washer on either side, and that makes up the room to where we get a good squeeze on the bushings. I have the shaft of the second sleeve lubricated again, and I'm going to get it into these bushings. Now, what I found with these poly bushings is it's easier to get the sleeve started from the inside rather than the outside. So I'm going to get it started on the inside. Push it in. Okay, got it started. I'm going to lubricate this side, and then I'm going to get it into the opposite one. So I could slide the sleeve through, get this bushing started in here, and then get the opposite one sliding on. Okay, they're both started on there. Now with the rubber mallet, I'm going to see if I could tap the bushing on a little bit further. Okay, I've got that one a little bit further on, and then I'm going to go underneath and tap the other one on a little further. You want to hold counter pressure on the opposite ones, so you're not just pushing the bushings through the leaf spring. To get the bushings on further, I'm going to use a channel locks. Is it ideal grabbing onto a bushing with a serrated jaw? No, but this is what I came up with because it's a little bit of a fight, so this makes it easier. So you just squeeze on one side and then go to the other side, squeeze a little bit, and you can work the bushings on further. And you get the idea. I'm going to keep on doing this. I got them a little bit more squeezed together. Now what I'm doing, I'm just holding the opposite side and hitting this one in and driving it in a little bit closer to contacting the faces of the leaf spring. Okay, so this one's all the way flush. Now I need to get the bushings further squeezed in, so I'm going to go back to the channel locks. Okay, so now I have both bushings contacting the face of the leaf spring. Now what I want to do is get the sleeve sticking out equally. As you can see right now, I have more of the sleeve showing on the inside rather than the outside, and I want to equal those out so I can get those nylon spacers and the washers on. So what I'm doing is I'm going to hold counter pressure with my left hand on the outside bushing, and I'm going to try to tap the sleeve outboard. So here's the big flat washers I got at Home Depot. They weren't the right inner diameter, so I did have to use a Dremel and a file and file them out a little bit to where they would fit over the shaft. I'm going to slide the washers onto the sleeve first, but I want to put a little bit of the silicone paste on the face of this so no wear to the bushing happens as these leaf springs are articulating. So I'm just going to put some on the face of the washer here. and then slide it on the shaft of the sleeve. And then you follow that up with the 2 nylon spacers and go over the ends of the sleeve. Now what we have to do is we want to jack up the differential to the sweet spot to where we can get the bolt through the leaf springs and through both shackles. So again, with my little helper, she is going to work the jack up the front differential while I'm watching over here, and I'm going to let her know when to stop. Go ahead. Go a little bit easier now. Slow it down, keep going. So you get your bolt with the washer at the head of the bolt, and then slide it through if you lined it up perfectly. And then you might have to do a little bit of tweaking to get it through the other side. So I can see that it's not lining up on the other side, so my helper, Allison, is gonna have to jack up the front end just a little bit more, and I'm gonna tell her when to stop. I think we have it now lined up pretty good. I'm just gonna help it along with the mallet. And there it is, it's through. Then just like the top, you get a washer on first, and then you get your nylon lock nut on. I decided to use a torque spec out of the 85 Toyota manual, and the torque spec they do for the OEM Shackles is 67 foot-pounds, and that's what I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these to, 67 foot-pounds. I cinched up the bolts and nuts with a 21 millimeter socket and a 22 millimeter box end wrench. It ends up, the head of the bolt is a 21 millimeter and the nylon lock nut is a 22 millimeter. So they're cinched up snug. Now I'm gonna transition to my torque wrench. I'm gonna hold the nut steady with the 22 millimeter box end wrench. And there it is, 67 foot-pounds. Now I'll do the bottom one. And there it is, 67 foot-pounds. After I did this install, I started to wonder, why did I have the problems that I had? And here's the reason. The kit was meant for 2.5 inch wide leaf springs. And it ends up that my leaf springs are narrower. They are 2 1/4. And so my fix of adding these big fender washers was actually what Davez Off Road advertises for the sale of these no wobble shackles. They say in the product description, if you have shackles that are narrower than 2.5 inches, that they can include some washers with the kit. And I unfortunately didn't catch that when I ordered the shackles a long time ago. I just assumed that I had trail gear leaf springs and that the width of my leaf springs was 2.5 inches, but I was mistaken. So my fix of adding the washers made up for that 1/4 inch, because each of these washers that I used is an 1/8 inch wide. So 2/8 equals 1/4. With the 1/4 inch made up by the 2 washers, that allowed me to get a good squeeze on the bushings and make the install work. That was my own screw up. It had nothing to do with Davez Off Road not making a good product. It had everything to do with the fact that I should have read the description of the product a little more carefully, and I should have taken a measurement of my leaf springs before making the order. All right, we're all done with this job. The big lesson I learned is, number 1, measure your leaf springs before you make your order, because if you don't have 2.5 inch width leaf springs, you're gonna have to let Davez Off Road know to include some washers with your no wobble shackle kit, so you don't have to do what I did, which was have to make a trip to Home Depot to get some washers and then make those washers work by dremeling out the inner diameter and spending time that I shouldn't have had to spend if I just had paid attention to the product description and took a measurement of my leaf springs to find out that my leaf springs were actually narrower than 2.5 inches. They were 2.25. Time is going to tell if these no wobble shackles are going to be the fix for my death wobble problem. Fingers crossed they are. I will report back after I get a few four-wheeling trips under my belt to hopefully report that yes, these shackles are the fix that I was looking for. My bushings are lasting for much longer, and I'm not trying to return home and have to do a roadside repair because my front end is going crazy. So, with all that said, we thank you for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean, and special helper Allison. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Sick mods and sick no wobble shackles. Peace out and bye-bye.